Hello, my name is Kent Philpott. This is the first program in a series of videos on Wicca.
Hello, Phil. How are you? My name is LifeChanging. So I'm going to be linking this video in your description box below the videos that I am responding to so that you have a chance to see this video.
Wicca, I did a series on Santeria.
Kent, first of all, I want to make a very clear distinction between Santeria and Wicca. Santeria is a completely different religion. Wicca is a completely different religion and practice. These two are very separate. Wicca is rooted and based in a Western European magical occult tradition. Santeria is not. Santeria has its own roots.
The West African, the Yoruba people's religion that got transplanted to the New World when slaves were brought over to the Caribbean area. And as I studied Santeria, I began to notice certain connections between Santeria and what little I knew about Wicca.
So again, as I mentioned earlier, you can compare Wicca to Santeria. But again, they are two separate practices. Yes, you can find similarities between these two, but they are completely different. They have completely different roots.
Admit, I didn't know much, but I got on Amazon.
I think you probably actually went to Google and not Amazon. I don't think Amazon has a search engine. I'm pretty sure you probably went to Google.
And got on Wikipedia and other websites that I found, and there are a lot of them, by the way, on Wicca. And I got a little bit of an education and put together a, almost an 11-page essay on Wicca. I was kind of interested because where I live in Marin County, and where I pastor a church in Mill Valley, Wicca is extremely popular. And I knew very little about it, not as much as I wanted to. So I'm starting off with this as information, but also I'm going to do some comparisons between Wicca and sometimes Santeria, but also from a biblical point of view, a critical analysis from that point of view. So, there is no official document that is the source of authority when you want to talk about Wicca.
Yes and no. When you're talking about Wicca in general, which now encompasses quite a far range of practices, all the way from the eclectic to the, say, traditional Alexandrian and Gardnerian practices. When you go towards the eclectic side of Wicca, yes, it is kind of a free-for-all, where people will take many different practices and different paths and different traditions and kind of blend them together to create something that fits the individual and makes it their own path and their own way. This is eclectic, and it has been happening for at least 20 years or so. And that is just kind of an eclectic style of Wicca. Then you have the more quote-unquote traditional Wicca paths, let's say Alexandrian and Gardnerian, and they do essentially have one book. They have one book that they follow, and now this book, as it has evolved in the different lines of the traditions, like let's say within the Alexandrian and the Gardnerian traditions, they have kind of changed and adapted a little bit, but essentially it is the same Gardnerian Book of Shadows from Gerald Gardner. So in a sense you are correct, and in a sense you are mistaken. So just to clarify that, there's the eclectic Wicca practice, which is kind of a free-for-all. And then there's a more orthopractic study of Gardnerian Wicca, which does essentially have a core liturgical book.
The dynamics, the practices, the rituals, the principles, and so on. And so I compiled a whole list of statements that have to do with Wicca, what it's about. I believe in information that people would know. So what often happens, people get involved in a group, they know very little about it.
Hold on there a second, Kent. I don't believe that that's accurate. I think that a lot of people get into Wicca absolutely knowing what they're getting into. They don't just blindly one day walk into a library and like a zombie go to the shelf and pick out this book and then go and buy it.
And they don't have a full picture. And the purpose of the videos is partly to give information about what this is really all about. And because it's much different, I think, than what is popularly understood about Wicca. Perhaps that will become evident. So I'm going to start with part one, basic facts about Wicca. Wicca is a growing religious system, though there is no Wicca church.
There actually are Wiccan churches. There are several which I will list here. But there is no central doctrine. There is no pope. There is no central authority.
Like in Methodist or Baptist. But the number of books on Wicca that are on the market are growing rapidly. And there are more than 6,000 Wicca-related websites on the internet.
Sure, if you want to go out and count all of them, I trust your numbers. I do not have time nor any desire to go out and count every single website out there, just so you know.
There are Wiccan radio shows, umbrella organizations, and state-certified Wiccan churches. A Wiccan is a person who is following the Wiccan religion or spiritual path and has either undergone a Wiccan initiation or has formally and ritually declared him or her to be Wiccan.
Essentially, yes. I think that you are trying to generalize and put everything into a convenient form that you can discuss to your audience. It's a little more complex than the way that you're breaking it down. Just to give you an example, again, earlier we were talking about the eclectics, and then we were talking about those who practice a non-eclectic or a coven group who are initiated. There are many Wiccans who are not initiated into the more traditional Wiccan lines, and they may go and have decided to do what is called a self-dedication ritual, meaning that they have studied Wicca for a while, they found out that it is something that appeals to them, and it gives them a way to put together a practice which fits them, and as a way to dedicate themselves to this new path, they may go through a self-dedication ritual. And then there are groups of Wiccans who are actually part of a group or part of a traditional Gardnerian or Alexandrian coven. Again, I'm using the term Gardnerian and Alexandrian to cover quite a wide range of initiatory Wicca lines, so just bear that in mind. And in order to become a part of, say, the Gardnerian group, one has to actually go through an initiation and be initiated into it. One could not simply just call themselves a Gardnerian Wiccan without actually going through an initiation and becoming a part of a particular tradition or path within that initiatory line of Wicca. Whereas an eclectic, you really don't need any kind of initiation or any kind of permission from anybody to become a part of it. You just self-dedicate yourself to it.
Some Wiccans use the word Wiccan and witch interchangeably, but there are witches who do not consider themselves Wiccans. Wiccans are a subgroup of witches, and Wiccans and witches are both subgroups of a larger group, and that is pagans. Pagans are practitioners of earth-based religions. Most Wiccans and witches consider themselves pagan, but not all pagans are Wiccans or witches.
Yes, this, I think, causes a lot of confusion with people. Wicca is witchcraft. Wicca, the term Wicca, means witch. Wicca means a male witch. Wicca is a female witch. Witchen is a plural form of witches, female witches, and Witchen is a group of male witches. So the word means witch. However, nowadays there are a lot of people who are revisiting and reliving, well, I don't want to say reliving, they're taking ownership of the word witch, but they don't want to be associated with those people who practice Wicca for whatever reason, but they do believe that they follow a witchcraft tradition or a family lineage tradition of witchcraft. And they call themselves witches, but they don't practice anything similar to Wicca. So it can be a little confusing because there's all these various different rules of semantics you kind of learn as you grow being in the pagan community. That there are all these various groups of individual people who self-identify with a certain label rather than another label, and you kind of begin to learn to refer to some people as witches, some people as not witches but pagans, and then some people who are Wiccans who are not pagans but they are witches. So it can get a little confusing, but just to let you know, there's quite a wide range of people just within the category of witches in the pagan community.
Witchcraft is what Wiccans and witches do, and Wicca is the name of the religion itself.
Again, this can become a mire of semantics, so I'm not going to correct any of that. I'm just going to say that I think that you are simplifying this for your audience. I'm going to leave it at that.
Now, they can be joined together in a coven, a group, or but they can be female only and oriented altogether, or they can be mixed genders, or they can be the solitaire. A solitaire is a witch who practices alone and is not in a coven.
Oh, one other thing though is, again, you're trying to kind of condense this down for your audience for them to easily digest it, and I completely understand that. But I think I should make something clear. In that eclectic development of what is called Wicca, there are a lot of people who have gone only towards the goddess aspect of it and just kind of left the male god and just focused on the female deity. There's several reasons for this, but mainly one is because they just want to have female-only covens. And there's various reasons for this. Maybe the group of individual women feel more comfortable being only around women, and so that is what they've chosen to do. And so in order to be in that group, you would have to be a female. This is kind of a Dianic type of goddess worship that is based upon Wicca. Most Wicca covens, which are of a traditional line, meaning the Gardnerian line, are based upon male and female polarity. You also do have the Minoan Brotherhood, which is an all-male coven. So again, when you have that eclectic mix of the various types of Wicca which have evolved over time, you have all female groups, you can have all male groups, and you can have mixed groups. And when you go to the more traditional line of Wicca, they are almost always polarity male-female. So I understand it can get very complex.
A coven can vary in size, but 13 is the number of persons who comfortably fit into the ritual circle that I'll describe later on.
Again, I understand that you're simplifying this for an audience so that they can easily digest it. 13 is more of a symbolic number of people within a coven. There are groups of people who have gathered together for a celebration or a ritual, or what we call a Sabbat, that have numbered quite many more people than just 13.
In it is the high priestess, who is seen as the goddess incarnate and is the spiritual center of the coven. Also, there would be a high priest, perhaps, who assists the high priestess and is seen also as the god incarnate.
So here you're talking about coven work, where there is usually a high priestess and a high priest. And yes, the high priest is considered to be the first among equals. That is in a coven group. In an eclectic setting, you don't necessarily have to have a high priest or high priestess. If you are a solitary eclectic, you are your own priest. You don't have a high priest or a high priestess. The only time you would have a high priest or high priestess is if you are in a group setting.
Wicca is new but old at the same time. Its origins are shrouded in history but magic.
Yes, you are correct there, and this is my own opinion. People may disagree with me. My understanding of studying Wicca for as long as I have been studying is that it is very much rooted in the Western occult magical tradition, which goes back probably more than 2,000 years, but at least 2,000 years. Now, that does not mean that Wicca is 2,000 years old. That is not what I am saying. But I am saying that the type of Wicca that I practice, I have noticed that it is part of a magical tradition that goes back for a very long time. The Wicca practice that I practice, can the person who it is based upon, his name is Gerald Gardner, that can be traced back to the day that he claims to have been initiated into the New Forest Coven, which is 1939. So, in a sense, Wicca, as it is today, modern Wicca, modern witchcraft practice, the start date is 1939. However, the research that I have done into many of the various Wicca traditions that I have studied, it is rooted in a Western occult magical tradition, which goes back much farther than that. So, yes, you are correct. In a sense, it is new, and in a sense, it is old.
And magic is what Wicca is about, has been practiced since prior to recorded human history. The Wiccan path is based on the earth rather than the heavens. They like to appeal to the environmental, the green movement.
I would say yes. I would say that people who practice Wicca, many of the neo-pagan movements, especially in the world today, are very much focused on the earth and taking care of the environment. And I know people like to identify that way with paganism and Druidism and Wicca. I don't really see the environmental movement part of my practice per se, as much as an understanding that my life depends upon the earth. I am not apart from it. I cannot just simply ignore it. It is a part of me. I am a part of the natural world. In a way, my lungs are the air of the earth. My blood is the water of the earth. The water that I drink comes from the earth and it nourishes me. My health is completely entwined with the earth. It is not separate from me. What happens out in the earth what happens to the quality of the water, the quality of the air that I breathe, and the quality of the food that comes out of the ground of the earth directly affects me. So I have kind of a different view of the environmental movement. I don't consider myself to be earth-based. I automatically am. The moment I was born, I was earth-based. It's a little complex, but when you begin to understand it that way, you see that you are not separate from the earth. You are the earth.
And kind of pass off that they're in tune with that and have a lot of what you almost might call rhetoric about being environmentally observant and so on, which is true. But to gain a little respectability and acceptability, perhaps, may be a little disingenuous.
That's kind of a judgment on your part. Myself, I do not look up at the heavens. I do not look at anything away from the earth. I do not focus my attention upon something that is outside of the earth. I fully believe that I came from the earth. I am a part of the earth, and I will return to the earth one way or the other. So I don't have an outside thing that I'm looking forward to later on. I don't believe that I'm going to be raptured and taken up and live eternally worshiping some kind of a sky daddy. That's not what I believe. If that's what you believe, that's fine. I understand that. Mine is very much rooted in this plane right here, right now. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I am a part of the earth. The earth is a part of me. I do not see a separation between these two organisms.
A witch uses magic, and that's M-A-G-I-C with a K, magic with a K, in his or her everyday life. There's no central Church of Wicca and no Wiccan Bible or sacred document of any kind that details the beliefs, rules, and teachings of the religion. What I had to do was go through a multitude of sources and kind of figure out what were the central principles. You learn, here's a quote, you learn Wicca by loving it.
I don't think you learn Wicca by loving it. I think maybe you learn Wicca by living it. So I don't know if maybe that was a typo on the end where you received that quote, or maybe you just misquoted it in that statement.
Wicca, with its focus on natural cycles and its emphasis on meditation and psychic abilities, provides many opportunities to touch the mysteries of the divine and the cosmos. Now, this is a major connection. This thing, not only the magic, which Santeria is big on, but the meditation and the psychic abilities, and also the trance states we'll get to later. These are all connections with Santeria and other areas, such as what the Wiccans would call charisma.
So I understand what you're talking about, the connection of trance states, magic, with Wicca and Santeria. And I have a understanding of the development of how cultures have perceived magic. And I see it evolving in a way where it all came from an understanding of shamanism and magic. Magic and the world around us was one and the same. It's various cultures, various different evolutions and ways of thinking of it and developing. But in a sense, we have all come from a shamanistic practice, and that shamanistic practice has evolved and changed into the various religions that we have today. Any religion that has been around for quite some time has some kind of a shamanistic root to it. So you can look at the Western occult tradition as a development of a shamanistic practice, which probably evolved in Europe, very broadly in Europe, over millennia before the domination, I should say, of the monotheistic religions Judaism, and especially Christianity. Before that, there was very much a shamanistic tradition, and you can see a trace of that, a line of that, definitely in the Western occult tradition, definitely in Wicca, and definitely in many of the witchcraft practices. Not all of them, but in some of them.
So, and Connections is going to be another video series at some later point. Some Wiccans teach that Wicca is European shamanism, and the word shaman refers to a person who enters into an altered state of consciousness in order to take a spiritual journey or to retrieve information, to do healing work, magic, tell the future, that's divination, or commune with the dead. And that's what Wiccan is all about, all of the things I just mentioned. And so there's the connection with shamanism as well. Wicca is a religion that many, but not all, witches practice. It is earth-based religion that honors both the god represented by the sun and the goddess represented by the moon.
Very simplistically, yes, it is. Traditionally, Wicca has a male deity and a female deity.
Wiccans are taught to be in tune with their psychic abilities. Big deal. Psychic abilities. Spiritism is a big part of Santeria. That element that was added by the Frenchman Allan Kardec.
Again, you keep conflating Wicca with Santeria. They, again, have similar magical, shamanistic core developments and practices, but they are two distinct traditions.
In the 19th century, well, it is right there in Wicca. Magic circles, the sacred space of Wiccans, are said to be between the worlds, and Wiccans travel between the worlds to meet the gods, get information, and heal.
So far, you're simplifying a lot of this, but so far I would not disagree with you. I think that you are giving an accurate reflection of Wicca.
Wiccans often enter ecstatic or trance states in order to work magic or commune with the divine. Many Wiccans have life-altering experiences that lead them to the Wiccan path.
Yes, you are correct, but I would say that the individual can have a life-changing experience that causes them to completely reaffirm their belief, whatever that is. Like, let's say it's a Christian or a Wiccan or something else. You can have an experience in your life that changes you or makes you feel more connected to your particular path. I don't think it is only unique to just Wicca.
And Wiccan groups often initiate new members in a symbolic death and rebirth ceremony meant to provide a mini shamanic crisis and shift the initiate's perspective. By the way, that particular statement comes from a book by, I can't remember now. But anyway, I'll quote the source when I'm able to find it. Now, I think that's all we're going to do for this first video, and I'll be coming right back with another one.
All right, so this is the end of part 1, and so part 2 will be coming soon. So, thank you for watching, and blessed be.